Salt of the Earth Farm Stories is proudly brought to you by Grig Media. Step into the world of farmers from diverse backgrounds across Australia.
Welcome back to our fascinating chat with 95-year-old John McAuley. In this episode, we talk more about the tough times of South Australia's outback, including the story of a 10-year-old boy lost in the Flinders Ranges. John then heads to Queensland to work as an overseer before returning to Commodore Station in '62, where he marries the love of his life. We'll also hear about those savage dust storms, starting a family, and the big leap of buying their own station in the Adelaide Hills. Hang on for the ride, it's worth it.
Righto. So the day I left Commodore, which just jump in the train a bit, as I came through Hawker to go to Swan Reach, Arcarola is for sale. $70,000 if I remember rightly, but that's why I don't write a book, because I'd have to re-look up that for sure. And as time went on, Reg Spriggs bought it. And of course he was the miracle man that knew all about the minerals and all the rest of it.
Clever man. And I've been there since and all the rest of it, and all the tourism that's developed and the tracks and so forth.
Reg did some clever work out there, and I met his son last year, and his son's out there doing some really good stuff too.
Yes.
To look after the country.
Yes. And then my neighbour at Commodore, managing Montpena Station, anyway, he went into dabbling in tourism and so forth. But going back to Wilpena, what broke Wilpena was just, you were a game man, you had to walk up the gorge to get in there. And some farming had been done in there many years ago, because when you got nearly up to the mouth of the hollow of it at the start of the creek, there was a sliding rock that banned vehicles from being able to go any further. But originally this Hill family built a bit of a peg wall on the rocks and logs and things, and got through and did some original farming right in the middle of the pound.
My partner and I climbed up the top there to have a look over the ridge. It's quite stunning overlooking that.
Yes, that's
I know
right.
what you're talking about.
Yep, that's it. And so from that, going back to when John Bannon, before your time, there was Premier of South Australia, he was his father and the professor from St. Peter's College in Adelaide, a bit of a scientist, I think, in the bargain, there as in the Wilpena Pound as two families. And they had to walk up into the pound itself from the outside area, the mouth as it were. And they're coming back as separate families, only, 100 yards apart and just broken up a bit as families. And all of a sudden, where's John? Where's this 10-year-old lad? Each one thinks the other one's got him. And find out neither of them's got him. Where's he gone? Well, the panic set in. All they knew was that he only had songs. He kept talking about he wanted to climb up St. Mary's Peak.
Yes.
And so, to finish up, it turns out that there was a great search mounted. And then to finish up, those of us around about, you'd be a pretty poor neighbour if you didn't enter into the search somewhere, because... So I finished up in there for a night or two with the mounted police. The neighbours, the Reynolds, had got some horses in there for people, and then we had to learn some military drill so that we didn't lose one another, to go in the scrub and see if we could find him from the inside.
Really?
And so we had to learn some military drill that we didn't lose the ones next to us.
Yeah.
Did all that and did that for a night or two. And it wasn't until months afterwards he was found. He did climb up from the inside, and his skeleton and a peg with an old singlet or something on it was found, and we were in Hawker the day of his funeral.
So how many years later?
He was lost in 1960. So I suppose it would have been 61-ish or something.
Wow.
No, it must have been after that because I was married and I didn't get married till 62. Going back to the story, though, I'd just like to just finish that little story, a bit of my life. And then when I'd had 2.5 years at Commodore, single and all the rest of it, and things were tough and there were no breaks, no nothing much. And I wanted to roam away for a break, if nothing else. And this man that had been with me, he said, if you go, he said, we're going too, because he just knew that I was the base. He was a reformed alcoholic was the problem, a true alcoholic, not just a heavy drinker. He was alcoholic, so it was nothing, or else end of the story. That's what ruined his life, managing the Kimberley properties. And of course he wouldn't talk, being a true bushman, he wouldn't talk till we were out at the campfire at night or something or other, and then he'd open up. But otherwise, he was the backbone of my help, and respectful and everything else, and so was she. And she cooked for me in those days. I went and got my meals from her and so forth. So I wanted to tick off. And so I went to Queensland for a while, and got a lot of experience with a big company up there, and talking about the experience of horses and lassos and so forth, and it was wild country back in those times. Anyway, to finish up, I finished up being an overseer at Government House of this big English company that had 6 stations in Queensland at the time, and I was recommended. I went out for an interview some hundreds of miles from Roma or something at the finish. I had a mate with me from Beltenna Station, but he came with me. It took me a month to get to Brisbane. We're in Elders one Sunday morning.
Sorry, what was your transport to Brisbane?
Well, I had a new utility by this time for my own transport privately, and we went in that, and he came with me. And so we decided that we would drive every day and always pull up at a motel. We never had motels in South Australia then. And then the other interesting part was we had 6 o'clock closing. So anyway, as time turned out and things changed, imagine having 6 o'clock closing today. And of course we're becoming multicultural and all these ideas. So anyway, I finish up in Queensland with this big company, and all of a sudden I've got 14 men, I'm Government House. The most important thing was to be dressed for dinner at night, and every man had to be finished up work by 5:30 or else put on another man. That was the important part. We're fighting the awards in those times. It was very serious.
It's quite prestigious.
Well, it was. I went out for an interview out from Roma, away out in the back block somewhere or other, where I was recommended I might get a job in a cattle station or something. Of course, I'd go out with a suit and tie and all the rest of it. Well, I don't know where I'm going, what I'm doing, only guidelines. It was wild country then. And I come to this settlement. And I think, I suppose this is the station. So out comes this woman, and she's got her teeth or 2 missing, and this, that, and the other, not exactly dressed up, of course. And of course, in my ignorance, I just assume she's the manager's wife or something or other. This looks a pretty big show. She's the wife of the fencing couple that are just living a hard life fencing.
Oh, no.
She said the homestead is another 2 or 3 miles on. Off I go. All of a sudden, this 2-storey homestead, because everything's weatherboard in New South Wales and Queensland, they haven't got stone like we got. And here's this, I reach this headquarters, so this manager guy, a typical case-hardened manager, appropriately, but he hasn't got a shirt and tie on sort of thing, but he's dressed appropriately, he's on the job. Takes me up top for an interview and all the rest of it, gives me a whiskey or 2 and so forth. And he says, I think it'd be more appropriate if you went back 200 miles to be an overseer on this headquarters of this lovely company. I thought, well, I suppose that sounds all right to me. So anyway, back I go. Stayed the night in Roma, and next day I approached this situation. And so it went on from there. You went to the kitchen after breakfast, cut your own lunch, food and stuff laid on, cooks and everything in those days. It was, the hierarchy was that long, right down to the fencer. And cut your own lunch and away you went. And you wouldn't be allowed near the homestead till at night, but when you did, in my case. And so it took me all day to deliver mail to the outstations and so forth. It was fascinating.
So you'd head off on horseback?
Yes, well, they see.
And you'd have a cut lunch?
And a cut lunch.
And I heard that you didn't like your sandwiches cut in half.
All right, well, that's going back to when I got... So that's where I'm pressing a little bit to not... I've done all that. My mother had a stroke and a few other things happened, and I wanted to come home. So I came back to my headquarters at Craddock, to my family. And then, of course, my uncle wasn't getting on too good with the staff and stuff while I was away. And, of course, he kept asking me to come up and help on a special cattle master or something back at Commodore.
Yeah.
So I go back up there and I'm still single, but I'm coming and going without any sort of ties at the time. And the next thing, I found that I had an opportunity to meet this lovely Joan.
All right, I'm looking forward to hearing this.
Righto. Well, I knew Joan as a child because she was born in Hawker and reared in Hawker. And she was a very exceptional, beautiful person. And her father was dying with asthma when Joan was only 15, and he used to have to go up to the hospital for injections. And the doctor that was there then, a German doctor that had come out, Bishop Werder, he said, Joan, if you would make yourself capable of giving your father this big needle every day instead of him having to get up there, and there was they were poor, no argument about that, and big family, and everything was walk and all the rest of it, and she did till her father died. And so then he went on to say, he said, you would make a beautiful nurse. He said, why don't you think about being a nurse? Well, it made her think that she would be. The first year, she wins the most popular girl nurse prize. From then on, it's history. She nursed everywhere, all over the place, Queensland, this, that and the other. And then I'm back at Commodore, still looking for company. And I think, I wonder where Joan is. Well, at that stage, she was nursing on Kangaroo Island, which was pretty crude in those days too. I thought, right, I'm going to find out. And so I did. And I was in Adelaide, of course, at the time, and I asked her to come to the pictures with me, and that was the end of the story. She'd been in Western Australia, won the coveted Beadle Medal or something for midwifery. She'd finished her nursing course. She had things and she said yes to me to go back to the desert of Commodore.
She came back to Commodore with you?
Came back to Commodore with me. I don't think any other person would have, because that was 1962. And things weren't too bad, but they went on to get worse and worse and worse. And the dust storms and many things, I wouldn't even see you. We just folded up, and I just sort of said to her that, you know, someday we might be able to break away and have something of our own, because it was just work, drought and desolation. And it got to the stage where I'd taken the last of the remaining cattle, 400, a train load to Fink. I'd been to Alice Springs to get trainload of cattle with a friend as a drover back in the 50s when Lake Eyre was lapping the railway line at Maree.
Right.
Yeah, I've had a few challenges that I've enjoyed and have made my career. And so from that, we'd got to the stage where the drought was impossible and the dust storms were hideous at Commodore.
This is at Commodore. And how many kids had you had at that point?
Well, at that point, we had two. Then we had Anne, the Swiss girl. I said to Joan one night, I said, come out here. I said, look at this. This wall of a dust storm is coming up from Bratchner across the plain to us. It's as black as you could see, beautiful. We're in dead calm at the house.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe. So next thing, it's about tea time, and we had food on the table and had a bowl of beetroot, apparently. While we're outside looking at the dust storm coming, Anne's got up on the table and got in the beetroot as a little kid. Well, that was fairly exciting. Next thing, the dust storm has hit. And Joan never once complained, well, you know, you talk about getting a property of our own, you know, anybody else wouldn't have. I mean, I got friends that came up in that period and they couldn't believe how we even stayed there at all. But anyway, she did. And then when Peter was being born in the Glenelg community, this property at Swan Reach was on the market, and a policeman in Blinman said, that country is chopped up on this side of the river into station country, and there's some nice old stone homes on them, and that particular one is out of the 56 flood. And I thought, well, the only break I got was to come down and have a week with Joan when the child was born. And my dad and I went up to see this property, and I took one look at that house up there behind you, not quite as it is now, but I made that up a bit more. There was this 4-room stone home, walls that thick. Well, to me, it was heaven. And I just thought, doesn't matter the hungry country coming back to 20,000 acres to the Adelaide Hills. I had 4K river frontage in those times. You could have fruit, vegetables, meat and everything. And we had a valuable swamp on the other side, which we had to go around 7 miles over the ferry around to finish up on a valuable swamp on the other side,
And that was your
opposite
country
the
too?
house. Well, I just went home and said to Joan and Dad, this is it. This is where I'm going. And I had to give 3 months' notice. Of course, I couldn't just walk away from Commodore. And we arrived there on my birthday, the 12th of January in 1968.
Wow.
And had 40 years of rearing the kids there. That it was absolute. A different lifestyle, many challenges, even though I thought it'd be the same as Craddock.
But you spent a lot of time saving for something like that, didn't you?
Well, we did.
Did you go and get a loan?
We didn't. We're the only. I've got the history of it going back over 100 years, and some of it even related to. I could relate to something of some of those periods going back that close to me as well, and they all had debts, and they all lost it, and this, that, and the other. And 1 or 2 that had money and did that sort of business, yep, they lost it. But we knew what hardship was, and Joan was so beautiful to me. She never pressured that she wanted this, that, and the other could have ruined me. No, we saved first, and we had no debt to take it on.
Well done. So this is on the banks of the Murray River, is it?
Yes. And the swamps meant the backbone of the property, and that meant work and irrigation and all the things I wasn't used to. But anyway, okay. So I rang Elders, yes, come and have a look. And the message was, it's looking terrible. It's had 3 bad years and absent owner, and the father-in-law was not able to keep up the work on it and all the rest of it, so that's why it's for sale. I said, well, that's good, Shirley. I said, that means that I got 3 years drought behind me.
That's right.
So I said, that means that knowing the normal run of that sort of country, that means I'll have some good years. Well, I did. And that stuck to my comment. It went around the town fairly quickly. And in reality, it was terrible when I went there. It was rock and stones. My dad didn't like the idea because he couldn't like limestone mallee country anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a challenge of having my own life that I could manage and my own freedom as a family. By 69, we'd had a fantastic year. My wife went into the town to get something or other and wasn't coming home. And I thought, and it's pouring rain. And I thought, I wonder what's happened. So she's come into the property, and then to come into the house from the road, about a couple of K, there was a little bit of a waterway come down from the cliffside. And so she's seen this water running, and she's decided to go up around it a bit, and there she stopped. So I go out in my ute, and there's Joan up there. I'll turn off the track and go up to her. Didn't realise that under that clay top, you strike rock. And it depends whether, see, out in the mallee sand, they can farm because the rock is a long way down. On my side, it is rocky country.
So you're saying there's just some clay and
yes.
10 inches or so of...
So Joan's gone up around the gutter, not knowing the country, so naturally, and she thinks she's going to avoid the water a bit deep in the gutter where the road is.
Yeah.
She's gone up around, gone through, since she's got up there, she's gone through the clay and she's down on the rock, and of course she's spinning the wheels. I do the same thing in my ute, go up to her, and so I had to go home and get the tractor to get the both of us to get home.
Oh dear.
So, but the point is that the seasons changed. But then they changed drastically, so drastically that the country, I didn't have any farming land.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like it. The spear grass was like that, as thick as a mat over the country. And I had the wrong shearing and the wrong type of sheep when I went there first. And I had no escape country for the seed. And I'd never seen anything like it in my life. We had spear grass and all that, but this was just an absolute wheat field was not in it. Next thing it got into the sheep. Next thing it got into lambs that I had. Their legs all swelled up. I didn't know what to do.
So these were wool sheep then?
There's wool sheep, and they got too much wool on them.
Merinos?
At the time, merinos. They were a bit wrinkly because they were the only type of rams that I could get from the stud at Jamestown.
Yeah.
But there was the dregs because of the drought, and I thought, well, it'll be the breed. I did the wrong thing there. This year grew spear grass like I've never seen since. It was just a year of spear grass, and I had to get caught in it. And so when you talk about climate change and things, that particular period, I went on to rejuvenating rock country like that into rejuvenating blue bush and stuff that used to be there, and still ran a few sheep, but carefully.
Saltbush you're talking about?
Yes, which is what it was naturally, you see, until people flogged it and all the rest of it. Sheep are worse than communism as far as vice goes. And I mean, it's the management of them that counts.
Yeah.
A phenomenal period for a little while that went on, and anybody that had a milk cow on the river all of a sudden had 30, 40 head of cattle that didn't know what to do with them. And that's where the next joke came in. Oh, my neighbour said, this bloke from the bush, he'll fix them up for you. And then, of course, I'd done a bit of butchering. And so then, I wonder would he come out and mark my calves for me? Well, the lasso and this, I was in my element. And next thing, we got these cattle, I wonder would you shoot one for us and butcher it for us? And there was another, I just loved doing that. I'd shoot one out in the paddock, drop it dead, they'd bring out their forklift, bring it up and hang it up So it was a very exciting change of life, but very challenging.
Well, that wraps up part 2. Hope you're enjoying this incredible journey as much as I am. There's one more episode coming your way, and in it, we'll hear about the collapse of the wool market, an Irish tale, and a story about heading to court involving marijuana on his property, plus John's connections with none other than R.M. Williams. Stay tuned, part 3 will be out next week.
Salt of the Earth Farm Stories is proudly brought to you by Grig Media.